an agent which can answer all the questions which a 10-year-old.
That sounds impossible.
Absolutely, that would be a great thing. So I struggle with that, but building other agents for finance, health, I think that I can handle it. So that would be one of the agents, but I would definitely have one that can help me out with it. With that, Radhika, I'll hand it over you to take over this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you all for introducing yourself. I'm so excited to have all of you here with me. And what fun answers. I mean, coffee, money, yes. I don't know. I have two daughters. I don't know if I can answer their questions. Maybe that agent can. So let's see. Right. So before we begin, actually, we'd like to learn a little bit more about the audience and who's joined our webinar so that, we can tailor our conversation accordingly. So everyone should see a poll pop up now. We are curious about your level of experience in AI development. So we'll give about 10 seconds for everybody to answer and learn about who is watching the webinar right now. How acquainted are you with the world of AI development? Whether you're here just to learn, or you've taken your first steps, or, fluent AI. So wonderful. Very, very close tie. Seems like majority of the people here on the webinar are curious about AI development, don't have much experience, but they really want to learn. There are people here who've started their AI development career and fewer experienced AI developers. So grade white net of people here who are interested in AI development. And with that knowledge, let's begin with some insights on how AI capabilities look like at Intuit. Sid, can you kick us off by starting to talk about AI capabilities at Intuit and its evolution since the time you've joined to what you see now?
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for that, Radhika. And it's great to know that a lot of folks here want to start off in AI. It's a fantastic field, and the way I look at it is that 50 years ago, maybe using a calculator, an advanced one, was actually something that people needed to advance themselves very significantly. And knowing how to use one was paramount for success. And I think learning how to code very basically and understanding AI, even if you don't know how to code, which is totally fine, because the thing is, I'm seeing LLMs do all the coding these days. In fact, the amount of code that we actually write is less. And the way I look at it is that if you're good at language, you can actually, guide the LLM towards what you want it to, even coding, right? And so, with that said, I'll tell you that the capabilities at Intuit have grown a lot, right? Back in 2017, 18, when I just joined, which was slightly just before I joined, I think we were still building out the team. We were starting off to think about AI, and go back a little bit to the time when AI became prominent, which is around 2014, 2010 to 15. I think that era, right? And that's when I actually was also doing my research work at that time. I found that I had accidentally chanced upon this field, which was growing in popularity as well. Absolutely not because of that, but because it was interesting from a mathematical standpoint, from an optimization standpoint, and from a coding standpoint. Like all of these things were put together, and we didn't have LLMs back then, right? I mean, we don't have the kind of infrastructure that we see out there right now. And as we moved along, back to fast forward to 2015 to 2020 is when started seeing a lot of growth in how AI was being used. And it was still a niche field because the thing is, most people are just starting to hear about AI at that time. And it was important for people to sort of see that it's something that could be useful because there was still a hype which was not justified at the time. And now, what's happening now is that you are starting to see that it's so useful, it is so important. Even if you were just using ChatGPT, you could envisage how important it can be for optimizing your business, accelerating your processes, automation, and so on. So if I go back to when I started off at Intuit, we were still building new models, right? We were still building new models, learning how to integrate that with the capabilities. We were not even on the cloud, right? Can you believe? So from being at that stage and building bespoke models for each endeavor, like be it propensity modeling, be it cash flow forecasting, be it reinforcement learning, which also existed but at a more rudimentary level at that time, now to actually having agents actually build these things out for you, right? and also agents being capable of using all of the infrastructure that is out there on the cloud, automatically, delivering done for you experiences, and then also being able to take in the human feedback and improve, which is a fantastic step, right? So it's not like the agents or the AI is actually functioning by itself. It's actually able to take in all of that and then improve based on human feedback, meaning which it's actually towards our reward system. So this is the state that we are at Intuit, where we have a fully capable infrastructure which can support all of these endeavors, right? And also we have a fantastic tool set of talent, which basically is diverse, right? I mean, for example, I have a background in astrophysics, and then I am here, for example, after several years or a decade of data science experience, and then essentially you have Uttam and Riti who have totally diverse backgrounds as well. And then we have a very representative team, which is exactly like that. So the point is that when you bring together a very diverse team with a diverse set of skills who are all interested in promulgating AI as a whole and actually using it to enhance the life of customers, essentially our central goal, which is to always look at what the customer benefited, because it's not just AI for AI's sake, but what are you actually using it for? And that's always been the central focus, but it's fantastic to see how much we've advanced capability-wise in terms of talent, in terms of the kinds of AI that we've actually deployed, and in terms of automation. So that's my long answer short, but I think I want to leave some room for the other questions as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sid. I mean, that resonates with all of us here, I'm sure, right? Like how we truly want to empower customers and, evolving AI from just automating tasks to truly personalize experiences on a different level, right? So the latest in the news is that Intuit has introduced agentic AI within QuickBooks, and as recently as July 1st, right? So these agents are working alongside trusted AI-enabled human experts, and they are providing businesses with expertise and support, right? So this is like the perfect juncture that I can think of, Riti. What are some key responsible AI practices and security measures that must be considered when deploying done for you agentic AI features in products?
Yeah, definitely. Responsible and secure AI is a very important and crucial stage during the life cycle of deploying all agents and, in general, any Gen AI based application. There are thorough responsible AI processes and checks in place that each application has to go through. So many of you might be aware of the traditional top 10 list by OWASP, that's the Open Web Application Security Project, for the possible security vulnerabilities and mitigation strategies for building secure web applications. There's now a new OWASP top 10 specifically for LLMs and generative AI based applications. So some of these include prompt injection, data and model poisoning, improper output handling, excessive agency, unbounded consumption, etc. So to ensure that we mitigate and handle all of these, there are a number of best practices that must be ensured. For example, validating, filtering, and sanitizing all the inputs and outputs. So we can define schemas and types for the expected inputs and outputs. We can add sanitizations and filtering and enforcing validations on the output format as well as an input, especially if it's like a free form input from the user. We should also ensure proper handling and classification of data. So it could be public, private, restricted, or sensitive. So we strive that any PII, that's personally identified data, is not exposed. There are techniques like anonymization, masking, etc., which should be applied while training models as well. And then there are guardrails. So all the system prompts have to be written in a way that they are secure enough and all the guardrails are added properly. There are also rigorous testing procedures that the application goes through. So, for example, there are red teaming tests or pen testing, which is basically the penetration testing to check for adversarial attacks by simulating those scenarios and scanning them, which checks and mitigates any vulnerabilities in the possible attack surface. There are some more other techniques like rate limiting. So that is done to implement volumetric controls to restrict the number of queries or data inputs coming from a single client within a specified time frame. So that helps in mitigating the risk of DOS, denial of service attacks. Then we also try to implement suitable RBAC, that's role-based access and permissions, to ensure that the user has the right access for the right screen. There are online and offline scanning and evaluations done for the system. Then we also include human in the loop. So human remains the ultimate control. So they have the ultimate review and approval control, especially in high impact areas. So they have the full control to reject, approve, or modify the agent suggested output. Then definitely appropriate logging, monitoring, tracing using observability tools and suitable eval mechanisms should be implemented. So these best practices and more in general can be used to ensure reliability, safety, transparency, accountability, privacy, and human-centered design while delivering agentic AI or any Gen AI-based application in general.
Wow. You covered a lot of ground there, Preeti. I think, but I did pick up like bits, privacy, security, human oversight, some fairness, transparency, and I'm sure we'll come back, right? I will come back to you. We can go deeper on some of these areas. But in general, right, when speed versus accuracy has always been like a big point of discussion. And Uttam, you're a builder at Intuit. And builders are responsible for increasing their velocity, right? Like you're supposed to ship out projects much faster. Whereas Sid, you're an AI scientist, and your job is to ensure that there is sufficient quality on the AI that is being shipped out. And I've been curious, like what is the sweet spot on this thing, right? Like how do you balance the need for democratizing AI and getting the benefits of AI back to our customers as soon as possible, right? Like we'll hear from Uttam first and then Sid as well.
Yeah, great question, Radhika. And I was also reading a lot of questions in the chat. I think there's a lot of comprehension and apprehension about like how AI is evolving. I think Sid already answered a bit of it in his introduction, wherein we talked about a fungible team coming together, wherein we are talking about to build a successful product, right? Like we need multiple specialists to come together as one unit. So basically, if you look at it, myself said, Riti, we are all one team. When we are building a product, that would be really providing a done for you experience for our customers and the real value that is needed at a real faster pace. So AI has been evolving, and with Gen AI, the cost at which it is actually being able to be used across multiple products has come down quite a bit. That means that it's a lot more accessible for a lot more people than it was a few years back. So with that and the evolution of the kind of tools, like we talk about Cursor, Windsurf, I think we can go in depth of each one of them. The pace at which we are able to convert an ideation to a product has drastically reduced today. And I was just discussing with the panel today that I had a use case in my mind about how do we build Gen AI ideations at a faster pace, and Cursor is a great tool. Windsurf is a great tool, right? Like where we can convert our ideas into an actual product within minutes, right? Forget about dates. The other place where we are seeing a faster adoption is wherein the knowledge about the core technology is evolving. I wouldn't say graying out; it's evolving in the sense that we need to still be a sound developer or a good developer who understands the core concepts of it. Like I need to understand what are the core principles that's needed for me to build a good front end application. I need to understand the principles of a Java to write a good Java service in the back end. I need to understand that the front end and the back end needs to be integrated together so that I can produce an output which the consumer can consume in the way that he's looking for it. So agents helps us as co-pilots, right? Like helps us in fastening this implementation, but that doesn't take away the whole process. If you start only working with these kind of tools like Cursor and Windsurf, the quality would definitely get impacted. What we have seen is that we cannot compromise on quality. Quality is always number one. There have been questions wherein say who owns it, right? The agent wrote it. Agent is just enabling you to write the code. the code is evaluated by an expert. That's you guys who are looking at that particular code which is generated. You are certifying that code and you are taking it forward from where you are going for it. So basically, human is always in the center, right, of all the coding and the development which is happening. All these tools, Gen AI is like a co-pilot, which is enabling you to move faster in this journey, go better to what you are looking at it, and provide different solutions. We always have seen a revolution about ML, AI, and Gen AI and agentic right now. So it's an evolution of how the technology is moving at a faster pace. So it's not just about now solving what was already seen. Now we are talking about generating new things at a faster pace to where we are going with it. So I think it's a very important thing for us to understand what is the role of each one of you in this new era of how we are developing a code at a faster pace, taking the ownership. So ownership of building quality code doesn't go away. You are responsible still for that code that is being generated out of it, validating it and building it in such a way. As you are looking at a complex enterprise solution, it becomes even more complex, right? The cursor knows only the context that you are providing for it. So you need to have the higher design level thinking so that you can integrate this and make it better from that. So once we have built something, I'll hand it over to Sid, because evaluation of these models or these outputs that we have built is also very critical to gain the confidence of the customers. So Sid, I would allow you to talk about the eval part of it.
Sure, sure. Before we go there, I'd love to talk about the eval, which is very important, right? And I think the just one thing I'd say is, if, just understand that we all drive cars, and we don't know how cars work. Most of us actually have no idea what goes under the hood. And I would maybe say that maybe 80% of us don't have a good understanding of the mechanical engineering and the the electronics which goes behind a stable car or a bike today, and we still drive it. It doesn't mean we can't use it. And so, to me, the process of democratization and making it available and the AI reaching the customers is a very organic one at this point, because what it entails is that whatever you build is scalable naturally. Meaning, which if Uttam has deployed an agent today, we shouldn't be doing the same amount of work to deploy an agent tomorrow. That's basically it, and that would enable the democratization to happen naturally. And then you could also be able to reach more customers very quickly, right? So what takes 3 months to start with should take 1 month, and then after that, a couple of days, and that's what's happening. And of course, along the way, there are several tools that you can use. You can use, all of these coding agents, all of the infrastructure that you have available to you. But the main thing here is that any work that is repeated should be automated, and that automation is being achieved today, and we've seen that happen time and again. So just to continue with that, when automation has happened, it's very important to make sure that we evaluate those systems and then make sure that they are in standards that actually are acceptable. Meaning, which we have an understanding of. Like, for example, I think the way that I would see myself is that I used to be a very strong scientist alone, and now I am a coder as well, and also an engineer at this point. So, in the sense that there is a diverse understanding of what these three roles mean. And at any given point, I'm not wearing all three hats. It's impossible to do that, because, in fact, if you do that, then you'll slow yourself down so much that you may not achieve much. So the point is that when you come to evaluation, that's when you actually ask the question, okay, is this in line with what you would expect in a prod environment? Is this actually done according to the standards of what AI should be implemented with? For example, I'm sure if I write some Java code today, I give it to them and will say, this doesn't look good. This is not up to the standards that I would actually expect you to code at. Of course, I would go to an LLM, so that might be solved. But the point is, how do you achieve the same thing with AI projects? Because AI projects generally tend to be a little more complicated, meaning which they have several moving parts, right? And they also have optimizations. They have generative AI now. They have agentic AI. They have feedback. Then there's a whole pipeline of how things happen. So the question is, how do you evaluate this? How is it working fine in production? And also, are the performance metrics actually making sense? So the thing is, this is a very critical thing where you need a combination of automation, meaning which using things like judge LLMs, for example. You have automated metrics you can provide based off of, say, lists. You have training sets, test sets, and those sorts of lists. Or you can have actual human judges for things like RLHF. which is probably the strongest form of feedback that you can actually give to the system. So it's a very complicated answer, but in the end of the day, I think we are at a stage where I don't think there is any more a trade-off between democratization and actually getting the AI out to customers.
Got it. So what I'm putting both of this together and saying, okay, we have to prioritize for customer impact, but we will make sure that we are focused on their velocity, automation, and we still iteratively improve the accuracy of our systems through feedback loops.
I think, Radhika, I just missed one point. I think we'd go with the three rule, which is cost, latency, and accuracy. All
Got
three
it.
should be met for actually building a good product out of it.
Makes sense. Cool. I'm going back to something we spoke earlier, Veeti. I think you mentioned, while you spoke of RAI principles, you also spoke about human oversight, right? So, how can we effectively integrate that human oversight and intervention into agentic AI experiences like Sid and Uttam just described, right? So that we can ensure accuracy, trust, and then we're meeting, and aligning with user needs.
Yes, sure, Radhika. So, as Sid and Uttam covered it very nicely about why human in the loop is very important, and reinforcement learning has been one of the top ways of implementing those self learning feedback loops. So, first of all, what's important? Definitely, since agents have a degree of autonomous, these are like mostly autonomous systems, so having that human in the loop helps provide that trust and alignment with user needs. There are ways to implement these feedback loops. For that, we first need to understand what are the different types of feedbacks. So there could be explicit feedback where we can integrate human insights like simple, straightforward thumbs up, thumbs down, whether they like the suggestion and output of the agent or not. There could be ratings, there could be free text feedback inputs. Then there is implicit feedback that whatever the agent is performing, has the user accepted it as it is, or they had to do some changes to that, they had to modify it, or they had to delete, and how much time they had to spend on it. So that's also some of the implicit signals that can be considered. Uh, so they can be structured and both unstructured kind of data that we can gather from how the user has been interacting with the system, because ultimately the idea is to have a human centered design for this agentic AI applications, which helps in providing efficiency, but at the same time ensures accuracy, trust, and alignment by keeping human at the center of it and providing them the right control, and for especially for high impact areas where they can override and even have the option to opt in or opt out or modify and correct what is being suggested. And then these self-learning feedback loops actually would learn over the time, and they can learn based on what these user preferences is, and they can adapt and evolve over time. So that's where reinforcement learning plays a great role. Uh, and as Sid covered about RLHF as well, so they can be like both online and offline RLHF that can be done to adapt. If you want to adapt to real-time user interactions, they can be online RLHF. If there's like pre-collected human feedback data that we want to process and adapt, they can be offline RLHF for that. Then basically these have to be incorporated in the design as well. Like the design itself has to be contextual. So let's say if I'm providing some insights or something, it has to be very contextual, that I can probably point out explainability for that particular insight, so that a user can drill down and see, okay, what was the further details, and then they can actually ask. So there are applications like Q&A where the user can actually interact and ask questions that, hey, why is this output like this, and what if something else was there, what if I can change like this. So we can actually ask questions and interact with and understand why such output was there. So such kind of things, and also ensuring RBAC roles. So we have right kind of role access permissions implemented to provide the desired control and customization. these kind of things can be implemented for human oversight. And definitely having tracing and like having proper tracing for the user interactions in the product can also help us learn about what the activity has been in the product, and we can use those tracing also for our evaluations.
Great takeaways, right? So folks can actually take away, designing systems with human review, correction, transparency. Thanks, Preeti. Sid, when you spoke about AI capabilities earlier, right? We always think of AI capabilities as like being leveraged by developers and stuff, right? Like how can we enable these capabilities to be leveraged by agents, right, today, rather than just humans?
Absolutely. I think the real key lies in two things, right? And I would say two things to start with, because I think this is going to go down a rabbit hole where I don't want to oversimplify things. But at the same time, it's important for number one, for your capabilities to be very well defined, in the sense that when you actually take an agent, right, and it looks at how to use a tool. For example, they have all these MCPs and things like that which are coming now, and what you notice is that all of the stuff which is very well defined in good language, it can do really well. If you have things which are ill defined or have too many edge cases, and you have no quantification, or you haven't actually done a thorough documentation of your work, that's when things start to fail. So it's important to have fantastic documentation on the stuff that you already have, which is number one in my book, because I think that's where most of the companies fail, and most of the endeavors also fail, because they don't actually have that level of documentation and thorough readiness when it's actually required for agentic AI to take over. So you have all this tribal knowledge, and then you have to move it over to something which is well documented, well experimented, and then you don't know whether you're able to achieve that. That's number one. Number two is you want to make sure that there is absolute explicit control on the outputs from the agents themselves. Because I see a number of questions which basically ask, how do you know that these are going to output something which is legally viable, or going to be satisfying your security controls and so on? Fantastically important question. And I think the way to do that is to basically make sure that your output satisfies certain level of constraints. And those constraints can either be thought about beforehand. Like, for example, if you're generating a dashboard, right, you can say that I can only generate these numbers of dashboards. I can generate 10 different types of dashboards. That way, you know that it's going to satisfy the constraint a priori. Or it's even better would be to sort of have an open generation process, and then say, okay, does it validate all of my constraints or not? Then go back till it actually satisfies, and then have fallbacks, right? And that usually takes care of things. So the thing is, these two to start with, right? And number three, of course, is I think we also want to make sure that these are not going to, I don't think this is necessarily going to be a problem, but I think cost is a big thing when it comes to actually automating these things out and also using these capabilities. And so one of the optimizations that the agent should know, like for example, as human beings, I think we sort of take care of it in one of the buckets that we want to take care of, but it may or may not understand what the cost of accessing the different things are, like different capabilities are. Like for example, right into S3 costs a certain amount of money. Spinning up an EC2 costs a certain amount of money, right? So if you're going to allow that level of automation, you want to also factor in what the cost of each of these endeavors is, to make sure that this is actually justified in terms of a benefit that the company might see and also the customers might see. So there is a customer side and there's the company side. So you've got to satisfy the constraints and also optimize for the overall benefit for the customer and the company at the same time. So these are, by the way, very few limited capabilities that I've mentioned that the agent must possess, but I think we can expand on that as well.
Yeah, thanks. So it's not just building autonomous systems. Is there enough ROI? Right? Makes sense. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Right. So this also, I think we've discussed this internally a bit, that today, let's say, folks are building software systems that human beings use, but they are actually meant to also make the AI behind it better, right? Because that exactly defines like the best experiences today, not just ones that benefit the customer, but how can it help make our AI smarter, right? So maybe Uttam, can you talk a little bit about how your software design process has changed? That it sort of in a way ensures that the AI capabilities are becoming more and more smart as users, are using the software.
Yeah, absolutely, Radhika. I think the way I want to talk about, I think this is very apt question for this particular discussion is AI first thought process. I think now it's a normal design thinking that AI is never an afterthought, right? AI first is the way in which we are approaching every problem statement that we are looking at it. So AI may be enabled for our customers in different ways. For example, AI as a chat agent is visible to the customer, or AI as a background service is doing a lot of automation, deriving insights from the data, and providing specialized forecasting, specialized insights to the customers in a way that it is not obvious for the customer. The reason for this is it's very important what our customer needs. Customer is in the center of everything. AI is just an enabler. AI first is a thought process about how we design a system, but how we deliver a system is always driven by our customer. So that's the kind of change that we are bringing in, wherein we don't want to be, uh, we don't want to bring something totally new, right? Drastically change the way the user uses it. That will never work. User knows what they want. User has a way in which they actually use the products. AI should just be an enabler in this journey where it is actually helping them solve their day-to-day problems. I think that's the way we are thinking and evolving the designs. So if you look at it, right, like AI is now embedded everywhere, like in the front end. How do we reduce the number of clicks for a user? How do we simplify the way a customer can use our product? If you look at the back end, right, we are optimizing code. We are building code using Cursor. You're building using Windsurf. We are writing more test cases, right? Because test case is becoming cheaper now. Integrated testing is becoming cheaper because you click a button, it automates the steps for you as you how you're going for it. So you are increasing the quality for it. The third one is the monitoring part. We are building agents which are monitoring the internal system, the infra part of it, and also the customer feedbacks which is coming. I think Reeti really covered well about the feedback and the reinforced learning we are looking at it. That needs a lot of data to be fed in, right? So these agents are intelligently looking across these signals which are coming from various systems. So the way we are thinking about AI first is basically customer centric from an Intuit perspective, and how AI enables us to deliver these new capabilities which our customer needs at a faster pace and at a higher quality. That's the evolution that we are thinking about with the AI first hat, which every engineer wears at Intuit right now.
Yeah. Thanks. I think Sid also shared a similar perspective where he said, learn, there should be continuous learning, and then we come back and iteratively improve our capabilities. Thanks, both of you. Right. So before we move on to talk more, I'd like to bring up like another poll so that we can ask how many people on this webinar actually know about agent evaluation. Maybe some of you know the concepts but don't know how it's implemented or used. And then we can do a deeper dive into that after learning a little bit more about the audience. Wow, really close tie between either having heard about it or just heard about it. Yeah, there are some folks who are like, yes, I can evaluate agents in my sleep. A smaller fraction though. So great. Thank you for responding, guys. This is a great segue, right? So, Reeti, I think you did cover like, hey, agentic features need to be evaluated. So, what metrics do we consider? How can we, make sure that user feedback is incorporated and agentic features are evaluated?
Yes, surely, Radhika. Eval is a very important aspect. I think all three of us covered in even our previous conversations, signifying the importance of eval. And it's even more crucial in this case because it differs from traditional ML systems and does not have any like predefined ground truth. So evaluation in this case is quite different from traditional ML systems. There could be online and offline eval. So there could be various types of evaluation. First type, if I have to categorize, I would say qualitative and quantitative. So first is we want to check how is the quality of the agent output. Is it giving helpful, relevant, no toxicity, complete answer, how's the tone of it. So that's about the quality of agent output. Second is on the, like if you have to give some quantitative scoring, so there are ways to achieve that. We can do online and offline evaluation. So online would be if based on real-time user interactions we are capturing, there are multiple ways to do that. We use observability tools like LangFuse to have tracing for all the agent steps that are being performed, and also capturing user feedback so that we can apply that feedback loop as well and not do these online and offline evaluations. Offline is more like when we take a batch of historical user feedbacks. We can also do like a back testing to evaluate our system on past historical data that would give us confidence for future, how it will, some prediction of confidence for the future performance. So there are ways to do that. As Sid also mentioned about using LLM as a judge. So that is one way where you can use another LLM as it's a judge, where basically it's evaluating the quality or accuracy of the agent responses. Then you can, if you have your own ground truth created or benchmark data sets, let's say based on past historical or some facts that this is how the output should be, then you can evaluate against those. Then again, there are so depending on user performance, right? So we can take that how many number of steps was taken by the agent to complete a user query. There were no redundant tool calls being made. So all of these can also be part of eval. Then we can have custom evals also defined. We can still have metrics like precision, recall, and acceptance rate, where we can define our custom ground truth. Let's say out of everything that we suggested, how many the user is accepting and how many the user actually changed. So that could be one way. So basically accepting rate, matching percentage, similarity or closeness to the value. So let's say if we are suggesting some number, how close was it to the final number that user saved. So those can be some of the metrics. So yeah, and then there can be more on the operational side of eval, that were how many, as I mentioned, like were there any redundant tool calls? Did the LLM go into any hallucination or error rate, or did it fail to answer any query? Those kind of things. And definitely most of them would be user centered, as Uttam also highlighted. That human is the core of it, right? We are providing done for you experiences to provide efficiency to the user. So how satisfied are they, and how much of the whatever we suggested the user is actually going ahead and accepting it, and how much time is saved for it. So how much time the user had to actually spend the time on that versus without an agent being there, or were they do they have to spend time correcting all of that, modifying all of that? So that can be a eval metric as well. So yeah, that's there. And then there could be some other types of evals also, like safety eval, whether there is safety and robustness implemented properly, like adversarial input evaluations, like simulating if I give some like malicious prompt, the system is well robust to handle such kind of prompts. So yeah, that's like majority like kind of evals that can be done.
Awesome. Great points. Thanks, Preeti. And I think you said humans are at the core of it, right? So, Sid, can you touch upon very briefly how important are explainability and reasoning capabilities for AI agents, right? And, if
Sure.
you can some techniques that can actually enhance these aspects, that will be
Absolutely.
awesome.
I think I want to give some time to answer questions from the audience as well. So I want to make this quick. So the thing is, explainability is crucial because you want to understand the working of the LLM and also how it's actually reasoning through different processes, right? Like, for example, I have actually really enjoyed some of the different offerings from Google or Perplexity and so on in the way that they actually provide the reasoning. So I'm also a big fan of things like Cloud Code for fundamentally because the way that they actually break down the code, the tasks, and then say I'm executing on each of these tasks is actually fantastic, right? And I think having that level of understanding, the transparency that comes along with that is very important. So in terms of methods, there are ways to sort of, in agentic AI, take it back to reinforcement learning. There are ways to actually attribute back to single variables using causality. you can actually use attention mechanisms to say that here are the responsible parts of the text. For example, if you're looking at the textual corpus, or if you're looking at actual variables which are controlling, say, a certain outcome, then you can say that, you can use things like Shapley and so on to give that sort of importance on those particular variables as required. So the point is that there are ways to do reverse attribution. One of my favorite things to do is do causality and actually say that, what is the counterfactual probability that, a certain kind of outcome might actually occur given that this did not occur. For example, if it did not rain, would I still go out, right? For example, and that if my going out was one of my metrics, then essentially then the question becomes, okay, is that actually going to happen anyway? So the counterfactual inference, causal inference, is a very important tool that you will see becoming more and more prominent as time goes on, and I'm sure people will appreciate it over time.
Awesome. Thanks, Sid. And one last poll for the audience. How often do you currently use AI in your development workflow? Can we have that poll come up? This one's a clear winner. We're leaning obviously towards very often. Clearly, people are, AI is crashing every coding party. Right? So, great. We'll do like a very quick round of lightning questions so that, we can start looking at the audience Q&A. Uttam, I know you covered this before, like some of the AI-assisted coding tools that we used, right? Like you mentioned Cursor, Windsurf, other things. Can you talk a little bit about the use cases that we are using it for? Remember lightning questions, so about 15 seconds.
Start with a very interesting thing. All of you, if you're using prompt, try this out. In your prompt, put this text. Say to the agent that, or the LLM model that, if you're not providing me with accurate information, I'll change you with a different LLM model. Put this and see the output which comes out of it. And I'm not joking, you'll be surprised with the output. So I would suggest everybody to actually go for it.
I heard, Uttam, that I think Claude or one of those agents actually gave them a threat, a significant threat after saying that.
I don't want to kill the suspense, but I'll allow you guys to actually go and do the prompt. It is amazing. You'll get different results. So please go and try. Sorry, coming back to your question, Radhika, I don't want to pull it out. But I think the key thing here is that the one area where it has really helped me personally is we come up with a lot of innovation ideas. The tech is evolving quite a lot. To do POCs, we used to take a lot of time. I think that is one area where Cursor is amazing. Like weeks has been turned into hours right now. It's not even days. The kind of evolution we are seeing. The second part, which I would strongly suggest everybody, is to understand the tool. Tools like Cursor and Windsurf are really powerful when you provide it with the right context. So I would always suggest that use your right Git repos, which has quality code as an input which goes into it, and then start deriving the new code which you are driving out of it. The third place where I would suggest is that testing. Testing is a boring job for a lot of software developers. They don't like writing unit tests. This solves your problem amazingly well, right? You point the class to which you actually want to write the unit test and say that, prepare me a unit test with proper boundaries. Suggest the positive and the negative scenarios that you would like to solve with it. And Cursor is really good in integrating that part of it. The fourth one and the really important thing is, how do you fix your errors? Many a times you get struck with few of the errors that you're not able to solve. You can ask it. The trick here is to first ask, can you explain what is going wrong? That gives you the context about what it thinks is going wrong. If it is thinking in the right direction, then ask it to solve for it. If it is not thinking in the right direction, please don't ask it to solve, because it will surely solve it in the wrong way. So these are few of the areas of how we are thinking from a developer point of view, of how these tools are really making a big difference for them. Radhika, back to you.
Thanks, Uttam. Okay, this question can be taken jointly by Reeti and Uttam, because this is also featuring in the audience Q&A, right? So definitely AI landscape is fast evolving. How can someone stay on top of the latest AI breakthroughs? 15 seconds for Reeti and 15 seconds for Uttam.
Sure, I'll keep it quick. So, I know like AI has been evolving at a fast pace. What I would suggest is, if someone is starting new, get the fundamentals right. So if your fundamentals are strong, anything that new keeps evolving, you'll be able to catch up to it. And second, don't get too overwhelmed with too many sources of information. Focus on what's relevant to your interest and domain application, and keep on experimenting. Being hands-on and iterating through it is the best way to apply. And you can follow key newsletters, industry announcements, company blogs. There's Intuit Engineering Medium blog page as well. And yeah, I think continuous learning, exploring, and applying and doing hands-on and keeping on iterating is the way to go.
Uttam, anything to add?
Preeti missed the point. Preeti, I'm going to use your agent first, which you talked about. So that's going to help me with all the summarized reports of all the things which are happening.
Yeah.
The second point I feel is that, which has really helped me, is that don't read more than 30 minutes. There are a lot of good articles, a lot of new technological text which is coming in. Use one of your actual problem statements which you're facing within your computer, which your company, which you're trying to solve, and align these new capabilities and tools on top of it to see you can solve. So once you have a real problem and you have this powerful tech and tools which is available for you, you start coding with that. You're both learning and you're actually evolving to a solution which might also help you with the current problems that you're facing for it. This is the kind of approach I normally take that has really helped me, because if I read more than 30 minutes, I'm going to doze off. So this is a great way for me to make it fun and actually help me with what work I'm doing also, right? Like that way it really makes a good sync for it. So rest all I think Riti has covered, so I'll not repeat on
Awesome.
that.
I think I'm just going to add something to this, despite actually not being asked. So sorry for that. But I think I would say very practically what I do is, if I have a new field I want to explore, I first ask GPT 4.5 or Perplexity to actually generate me a report on what needs to be done, how to process it, and then I go to Claude Code and have it generate the code for me. And then I'm actually at 20 days of work in minutes to actually get that, because I think the cross ideation and then generating the code are two different LLMs, and you know that all LLMs are not meant for everything. So I have a very strong point of view on what is good for what, and I think Uttam also does, and so does Riti. But I think this is a very simple way to avoid having to learn everything and break the bank in terms of that.
Awesome. Micro read, hands-on experiment, and then find experts like these and follow them. Okay, hound them so you can learn a lot of things. Thanks, Sid. Right? Okay, so Sid, very quickly, right? Can you share an example of an extremely complex problem? Because I want to make this more real for people, right? Something like very complex, add into it, or Excel perhaps too, right? Where you had to use an agent-based system, right? A traditional machine learning or a rule engine couldn't solve this, right?
Sure. I'll give you two problems. So, for example, the first one, there are two reasons why you would do that in the first place, right? First is that the LLM is not able to solve the problem on the first try. So, essentially, it needs multiple tries to actually solve it. Number two, with its own feedback, right? And number two is basically that as a human being, you want to give it input to actually take it towards the answer that you are looking at. Because in many cases, it's actually very open-ended, and then you want to cut down that parameter space and then say, okay, you got to search in this part of the parameter. So with this in mind, I'll give you two examples. Number one is basically what we call data Q&A at Intuit, which is essentially something where we want to ask questions to the data and then get answers. So that you think about natural language questions and on the database, and then you basically getting answers back. And the idea is that you want to basically make sure that whatever you say is translated back to code, and then the queries that results from it comes back to you, and then you look at the query, assess it for relevance, and then take it back until the answer is relevant, right? So this means you need a number of loops on the agent, right? Number two is basically something like you're trying to plan the financial scenario for a person, right? And in this case, the machine generates a scenario for the person saying, okay, you need to reduce your spends, for example, in this, in watching movies, for example, or maybe you're spending too much money buying paper, or you're spending too much money hiring labor, and it's saying that, okay, you need to reduce your spends here, 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 in order to be more successful as a company. And the point is that you say, sorry, I can't do reduction in labor spending. I have to spend the amount of money for labor. So you got to now tell me a new solution so that you can actually adapt it to what I need, right? And this is a problem that basically needs a human input to actually be better as an answer and more relevant as an answer, whereas the data Q&A answer was something that is required by the machine itself to actually improve its answer till it was relevant. So, and this is why Perplexity and those kinds of platforms, including GPT 4.5, which is agentic, actually keep checking for constraint satisfaction, meaning which it actually has to satisfy the answer Until that time, it will keep regenerating till it can. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Sid. So I'll do the last question to Uttam, and then I was just looking through the Q&A to glean some sort of themes from there. I think a lot of areas we have actually covered, but folks, don't worry. Like, we will go through the entire Q&A and then get you your answers via email as well post this session. Um, right? But one of the things that I wanted to leave everyone with is, Uttam, like, what are the biggest misconceptions that people have when building and deploying agent-based systems?
Yeah, I think at Intuit, we did a big launch July 1st, where we had our first set of agents across all of our offerings, which we go. So a lot of learnings were there. The first thing is that uh, agent does a lot of, like, which we heard from a lot of our customers, is that a lot of things happen in the background. And I think one of the key design considerations we have taken with agentic approach is that we want to gain the trust of the customers by having uh, transparency and a good explainability about how we came to the reasoning, how did we take the actions, and always have human in the middle. So this is one way in which we want to bring out the thought that agent is taking over a lot of our task, automating it in the background, but we want to bring in, to say, the power of an agent. He's like a co-pilot which is working along with you, for you, and helping you do your work a lot better for it, right? So that is one of the areas where we are looking at it. The second one is like, who controls it, right? Like, we have roles and responsibilities of the user, who is accessing to it. So there's a huge work happening, wherein we are providing each of our agents like an identity. Like any user, any role who's coming in, agents are going to have their own identity. So we can easily track, we can understand what actions each one of the agents has taken. We can take corrective actions on that. We can define boundaries in which that particular agent can work. So that's another area we are looking at it. I think the most common other thing which comes in is agent going to take over our job? My answer is that absolutely not. I always feel that a good coder is needed to build some good products. That usage of us is never going to go off, whatever agents we are going to build it. But the way we are going to build systems, the way the tools we are going to use for it, and how we are going to implement it, definitely it's already changing, right? That's how we are all working towards it. But if there are any specific things which people want to talk about, I can take it. But these are few of the overviews that I wanted to cover there.
Thank you, Uttam. Sid, there is one specific question that I thought this aspect we haven't really touched at all. There is one audience question that asks, are you fine-tuning models on Intuit's proprietary financial data, right? Or using
Yeah.
RAG?
Yes, we do that. We do have a bespoke model called Plume, which we actually have internally used. It is fine tuned, and the point is that it also helps with the cost. I mean, there's a huge cost reduction that comes with actually being able to have host your models locally and then fine tune them as well. But having said that, if you ask the question, is it able to deal with a diverse set of tasks? And I would say that maybe what needs to be evaluated on a task by task basis is that, are you better off, say, using a RAG, for example, and the RAG based clustering, and then looking at generalized LLM, which doesn't need any fine tuning to answer those questions with the RAG, or do you need to actually fine tune it? And the answer can be very different for each task. They based on how the LLM is actually tuned, what kind of data is actually available to it, and how rapidly the data is actually changing. So I would say it's right now we are more like at 60-40, where 60 towards actually using something like an LLM with a RAG, and 40 towards actually using a fine-tuned model. But I think we are sort of slowly getting more towards the 50-50.
So, thanks, Sid. So, folks, how did it go? We'd love to know from you. You should see a poll pop up, and please give us your feedback. We will also have another feedback form after the end of the session shared with you. And thank you. I'll take this opportunity to thank Sid, Riti, Uttam for taking out time sharing all of your insights with us. And to all of our audience, thank you so much because you've been answering, participating in this webinar. It was like wonderful to see that. Thank you for staying with us throughout the webinar and watching the whole way through. Right, we really, really appreciate your participation and your curiosity, and really looking forward to seeing you again in a future webinar. Right. If any of you are new here, please scan the QR code and join our talent community because this gives you exclusive access to job alerts, tailored insights, events such as this, rich content, employee spotlights to enhance your career and stuff. So, thank you for being with us today. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
all.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Recording.